Good morning, everyone. I'm Trina Erickson, the director of the McIntosh Memorial Library, and I'd like to welcome you to our bi-monthly Conversations program. This is a program that we do on the first and third Friday of each month at 10:30, and we offer a different topic for each one of these programs. Being that Earth Day is coming up next week, we thought it was very timely to invite our friends from the Valley Stewardship Network, which is located in downtown Viroqua. And I will go ahead and let all of you introduce yourselves and feel free to move forward with your presentation.
Thank you so much. We're really happy to be here today. My name is Shelley Gradwell-Brenneman, and I'm going to be starting off the presentation and then handing the baton to Dave Creer and Nan Marshall, who will talk a little bit more about their programs. And also joining us today is Tom Lukens, who's our board chair, so he'll be available for answering questions, and we'll go ahead and get started then. We'll all be sharing our screens. We have some slides to share with you all, but thank you for inviting us. Can everybody see that? Great. Well, we're really happy to be here near Earth Day to talk about what we do at Valley Stewardship Network. Next week will be the 51st anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, of Earth Day. And Earth Day is a really special day for Wisconsin because it was really started by a Wisconsin governor at the time, Gaylord Nelson. So we have that sort of claim to fame that we helped start Earth Day, and that was in 1970. And so we're really happy to continue to celebrate Earth Day every year, but also think about that old saying that, you know, try to celebrate a little bit of Earth Day every day in the way that we live our lives and the way that we interact with the environment. So we think about that a lot. Today we're going to talk about how you can connect to protect your watershed. And again, today we have myself, I'm Shelley. I'm the co-director of Valley Stewardship Network, and I focus on programs. Nan Marshall is the co-director, and she focuses on operations and communications. Dave Creer is our water quality, native plantings, and citizen science coordinator. And again, Tom Lukens is here with us, and he is our board chair. Began in the year 2000 and focuses its work in the Kickapoo and neighboring watersheds. Valley Stewardship Network protects our land and waters through research, education, and community empowerment. And you see this map here to the side. You might wonder, what is a watershed? And so I thought I'd spend a second helping you look at this map. Depending on where you live in the area, even Viroqua itself is in 2 different watersheds. And basically the definition of a watershed is all the land that drains into one body of water. And in the case of our area, it's usually a creek or a river. And so this big watershed right in the middle of the picture, the Kickapoo River watershed, is all the land around and above the Kickapoo River. And so if you live near the Kickapoo River, likely you're in the Kickapoo River watershed. If you live over west of Viroqua or in the west part of Viroqua, it's likely you might live in the Bad Axe River watershed. So all the land, if a drop of rain falls on the land, all of those drops of water, including what's underground in our groundwater, will flow through that land into the Bad Axe River. That will collect all of that rain. So you can see there's lots of watersheds in our area. And so we encourage you to get to know your watershed more, and we'll come back to this slide at the end of the presentation when we discuss ways that you can help your watershed. A little bit of VSN history. As I said, we were originally founded in the year 2000 by sportsmen and conservation groups who wanted to establish a network to share ideas for protection of land, water, and habitat. A lot of our early years focused on water quality monitoring, going out into the watershed, into the creeks and rivers, and taking samples of water to see how clean is the water, how is it doing. Excuse me, how is it doing? And sometimes finding that there are areas that could be improved. And so in recent years, we've changed our focus to measuring the water quality benefits of land use improvements. So as we make improvements to our land, use, practices, then we measure the water quality benefits of that. And so we can see a win-win there. Also, it's kind of interesting that VSN in our early years and throughout the years have coordinated community conversations, hosted agency collaboration meetings, and helped launch initiatives that led to the development of WDRT Radio, the Driftless Area Art Festival, Fifth Season Cooperative, several local food system assessments, community hunger solutions, and the Kickapoo Grazing Initiative. So VSN really tries to be a hub of collaboration and of coordination, so we often are involved in launching new initiatives. Right now, our VSN programs include water quality research, citizen science, watershed councils, the Tainter Creek Grazing and Water Quality Project, farming with prairies, bird-friendly farming and habitat enhancement, youth and community education, GIS mapping and modeling, and watershed planning. I'm not going to read all of these partners, but just so you can get a sense for how many different partners we work with. We work with more than 30 different partners, all the way from local schools to local businesses, local agencies on the county and state and federal level, all kinds of partners coming together to make these programs work. And we feel very strongly about the value of collaboration to do the good work to take care of the environment around here in our special area. We do a lot of our programs funded through grants. We have several big projects right now. One of them is funded by the Pasture Project, which is at the Wallace Center at Windrock International. We also work with the Fishers and Farmers Partnership for the Upper Mississippi River Basin, which is through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We work with the North Central Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, which is through USDA. We really appreciate the support of the Laird Norton Family Foundation and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And it's important to note that a lot of our programs are grant funded, but not all of them. And so having memberships really are important to us to balance out our grant funding to make sure that we can do all the work that needs to be done. We're kind of excited, and I thought I'd throw this in since it's a library presentation, that we have a publication that was previously called Owning Rural Lands, and it's been in the process of revision for several years. And we're excited that this year we're really hoping, kind of got a little bit waylaid with COVID last year, but we're hoping to have it done this year in 2021. But it's a stewardship guide for landowners, community members, and visitors. And it's kind of a one-stop shop for lots of great information, whether you're a landowner in the rural areas or have a big backyard in town, or you're a farmer or a visitor to our region, that you can learn a little bit more about how to take good care of our unique resources. One initiative we're excited about is called the Kickapoo Bird Habitat Initiative, and it's a project with VSN, the Mississippi Valley Conservancy, the Kickapoo Valley Reserve, and the Department of Natural Resources, focusing on how can we help birds, how can we help landowners and backyard owners increase bird populations by planting native plants and other techniques to help increase bird habitat. We have a very important area called important bird areas, actually they're called that, both around the Kickapoo Valley Reserve and in the lower part of the Kickapoo River watershed, where it's been noted and designated that has some of the best bird habitat in the whole state of Wisconsin. So we have a lot of great work to do to protect the birds in our area. We also work a lot with on-farm stewardship research and demonstration, and you'll hear more about that later on in the presentation. But we work a lot with prairie strips, bird-friendly grazing and haying, cover crops, and converting some row crops to pasture to protect water and soil quality. I'm really excited personally because I'm a big bird watcher. I love watching birds. I'm excited about our bird-friendly farming program. And basically what that entails is that we encourage farmers and help them learn about ways to adapt their grazing systems to include refuge for birds to nest. So there will be a certain section of the pasture that's left alone that won't be grazed by the cattle. So it gives grassland birds a chance to nest and have their eggs hatch and have their young fledging from the nest successfully before that area is grazed. And similarly with hay fields, we work with farmers to learn new ways to adapt their haying practices to protect grassland birds by waiting until after July 15th to make the first cutting of hay. Now that, for those of you that know a lot about farming, you know that's kind of late in terms of hay quality, but we do work with farmers who have developed a seed mix for their hay fields of plant species that mature later in the year. So actually, even though you're cutting later, the nutrition of those plants is actually still quite high. So there is a way to do both, to have good hay and bird habitat. And we're also working to develop markets for the bird-friendly hay and beef. So if you're a consumer who loves to eat really great local beef, there's an extra way to support our local beef farmers who adopt these bird-friendly practices, so that if you're interested in supporting birds with your food dollar or what you choose to eat, that there's going to be a connection for you to do that. We also are excited to work with watershed councils. Watershed councils are basically groups of neighbors who live in the same area, same neighborhood, the same watershed, and they work together to try and improve land practices to take care of the water and soil. We work a lot with the Tainter Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council, which is in both Vernon and Crawford counties. We work with the West Fork Watershed Neighbors Council, which Tom is very involved in and could speak to that later if you have some questions. And also now we're working on developing with the neighbors and watershed residents in the Coon Creek and Bad Axe watershed. So stay tuned for more information in the future about those watershed councils. Here's a picture of a program, pre-COVID, of course. I thought it was kind of fun to remember what it was like when we all gathered in groups. But the West Fork neighbors got together. They surveyed 600 residents in the West Fork watershed to see what they were interested in. A lot of folks were interested in bird habitat and invasive species control. And so this group has been really active in learning more about how to improve bird habitat, using conservation goats and sheep to manage invasive species, and more recently doing some wetlands outreach and education and demonstration. Tom does a lot of that at his place. There have been more than 35 landowner stewardship site visits in the West Fork watershed, and they also were involved in well water testing in 2019. Here are just some pictures again of when we used to gather in large groups over the last few years in the Tainter Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council. Lots of farmers getting together to learn from each other, both in meetings throughout the year and specifically with field days during the growing season. So this is just a sampling of examples of the real strong interest that there is by the farmers in this area to get together and learn from each other on how we can take better care of our land and water. So specifically, how we support watershed councils, we help folks, both farmers and landowners, learn about regenerative practices. And regenerative practices are those that reduce erosion, so reduce the amount of sediment going into our streams and rivers, reduce phosphorus and sediment runoff, increase soil fertility, and manage water and soil quality. We do a lot of water quality assessments, as I said before, to show how these positive practices can contribute to water quality protection. We coordinate whole farm assessments, grazing plans, help establish pasture walks and field days. Again, water quality assessments, which Dave will talk more about. We have cost share programs for implementing cover crops, native plantings, converting cropland to pasture, and enhancing current grazing practices. So that's kind of more specifically how we help the watershed councils develop regenerative practices. And that's my final slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Dave Creer, who will tell you a little bit more about native plants and our water quality program. And I'll be here also if anyone has any questions later on.
All right. Thank you. And are you guys seeing my slides now? Okay, good. So I'm Dave Prairie, and I cover citizen science, surface water monitoring, and native plantings for VSN. One of the things that you heard Shelley mention was goats and sheep as a conservation practice. And so we work as part of a public-private partnership with Vernon County, with the Land and Water Department, the Friends of Vernon County Parks and Forests, and a private company, Vegetation Solutions, that actually owns the sheep and goats. And we help to move those around the area and use those to combat invasive species. So the great thing about goats and sheep is that they really prefer what are our 4 worst invasive species in this area: buckthorn, garlic mustard, wild parsnip, and honeysuckle. So if one of those 4 species is there, even though there might be a bunch of other stuff, they'll go after those 4 first, which is great. And so we participate trying to help with these twice daily checkups to make sure the animals are there, setting up fences, moving the herd between paddocks. And last year we worked mostly in Hubbard Hills, Sidey Hollow, and Asofia County Park, as well as some private landowners as well. We also work with farmers on soil health monitoring. And what we've been doing is really focusing on comparing some native plantings, which I'll talk about in a second, row crops like corn and soybeans, and then pasture or grassed waterways. And then we look at a variety of different things in the soil. One of them is water infiltration rate. So that's how fast water actually goes down into the dirt as opposed to just running off. And so increasing organic matter will help increase the amount of water going into the soil, so that can help reduce flooding. And you can see out in this little graph in the lower left corner that a grassed waterway compared to a soybean crop can absorb much more water before it starts to run off. So that's important to know as we look at farming practices and how we can improve water quality and reduce runoff. We measure soil organic matter, bulk density. We also do a chemical analysis so that we can help let farmers know what kind of fertilizers they should be putting on. And then biologic activity to improve that fertilization efficiency so they can get by with less fertilizer. We have a couple different things. Shelley mentioned how long we started 21 years ago doing water quality monitoring. And we really have 2 different avenues that we do. One of them is maybe more of a project specific kind of water quality monitoring, where there's a grant and somebody wants to know something very specific about something with water quality. Maybe they're changing some landowner practices on a farm and they want to see how that impacts the water quality nearby. So for those very specific project things, we're looking for total phosphorus and nitrogen. We also do macroinvertebrate sampling. Macroinvertebrates are the little bugs that live in the water. When we look at phosphorus and nitrogen, those are moment in time kind of measurements. So we go out and we take a measurement of the water, but the next day it might be a little bit different than it was when we just measured it. Macroinvertebrates, on the other hand, they're in there their whole life. So they'll be in there for years and years. And so whatever the water quality is has to be good enough for them to survive. And so by looking at the different kinds of bugs in the water, we're really able to tell how healthy that water is. Because some bugs need very, very clean water, and some bugs can live with relatively polluted water. And by looking at the kinds of bugs we're seeing, we can get a really good gauge for the average water quality that area has over many years. And like I said, this is generally grant funded to look at very specific things that folks want to know about their water quality. And you can see on this map on the left, we have water quality monitoring sites all over the place. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but Viroqua is kind of like right here in the middle. And then we have many different streams and watersheds that we're looking at water quality in. The other kind of water monitoring we do is not grant funded usually. It's part of what we've been doing for 21 years, and it's much more just understanding the baseline water quality in an area, not related to a specific field or anything like that. And this is Water Action Volunteers. It's a program, it's run by the DNR and the University of Wisconsin Extension. And the wave monitoring measures the water clarity, the temperature, flow, dissolved oxygen, the habitat, and macroinvertebrates. And this is done once a month by volunteers for 6 months. It starts in May and goes through October. And we do the training for volunteers. And then they'll go out to a specific site and they'll go back the next month and the next month for 6 months to that same spot, take the data and enter that information into a DNR database, which is online. So you can go out and see, where we've been testing and what the data is. That's called the Surface Water Integrated Monitoring System, or SWIMS, that the DNR has, that online database. What's very interesting about that is it's the exact same database that the DNR professionals use. And so they trust the training that we give to volunteers to generate data that's of equal importance and equal quality as what the professional DNR folks take. So it's very interesting to go in and see that data all in one spot. So through that, this is a picture of a water quality monitoring training that we did, not last year because of COVID, but the year before. So we have about 40 active volunteers, and over the 19 years that we did the training, we trained over 300 people in the area. We do have 2 more trainings coming up for this year, so if anybody's interested, both of them are going to be at the West Fork Sportsman's Club in Avalanche. And they're 2 hours long, Wednesday, April 21st at 2 o'clock, and Saturday, April 24th at 1 o'clock. So if you're interested, you can just get a hold of us at VSN and we'll get you registered for those trainings. And then if you have a stream that you're particularly interested in, you can sample there. And we don't, I won't say we don't care, but if you have a spot you're interested in, that's fine. If you don't have a spot though, we can find a place that we do have some interest in, or maybe some historical data and we want to keep measuring there. So we can help people find public access spots on streams to do that monitoring. And that is really valuable at helping us understand the baseline water quality in the area. And over many years, the 20 years we've been doing it, we're able to see changes in water quality in the area, which is great because it can help us identify areas we may want to focus on or areas that are doing fine. We also do youth education. So we'll go and these are pictures where we're taking students out and showing them what's in the streams, how we do the water quality monitoring. The Viroqua Montessori 4th graders have done an Adopt a Stream project where they actually go to the Springville branch of the Bad Axe and they monitor that water every year or every month, which is terrific. They even do it during the winter. So they're pretty hardcore. Even I don't go out in the winter very much and do water quality monitoring. And then we also do local field days with the schools. So if they just want to come out for, their spring outdoor activity thing, we'll do the water quality monitoring with them. Totally different now. One of the things that we're doing is farming with native plants. And so we have 3 different methods we do that, and I'll talk about those: prairie strips, streambank stabilization, and then grazable native plantings. So this really started with Iowa State University. So they developed this concept called STRIPS, which is called Science-Based Trials of Row Crops Integrated with Prairie Strips. And what they wanted to do was find out if you took a corn or soybean field and you put just 10% of that field into native plantings to help, slow down the water that's running off of that field, what kind of benefits can you get? And so they did lots of different research over in Iowa on this. And what they found was that if you just take that 10% of a corn or soybean field and put it in native plants, you can really reduce the amount of sediment that's coming off of that field, which reduces the amount of phosphorus and nitrogen loss you're getting, really slows the water down. 42% of that water flow is reduced. It doubles the bird species. It provides lots of browse for deer, pheasants, and turkeys. A lot of increase in pollinators. It also provides for some warm season forage for animals. Most of the pasture areas around here use cool season grasses. So in the spring and the fall, there's a lot of growth, but in the summer, they tend to go dormant. These are kind of the opposite. They'll be a little bit slower in the spring and fall, but a lot of growth in the summer. And then we took that approach and we thought, man, this would be really good for stream banks, which tend to get ripped out during flood events. And so we've developed I'll show you some pictures, some native plantings to put along stream banks, which can really help reduce with erosion and things during flooding. And it also helps increase soil microbial activity, which lets plants uptake nutrients much better. So how do native plants do that compared to non-natives? Well, here's a picture of some native plants, and you can see the root structures that they have. They're very, very deep. which means a lot of water infiltration can happen, which helps reduce that runoff and holds the water on the land instead of just shooting it off as fast as it can. The stems up top tend to be very thick and robust, and that helps really slow down the water flow as well. And so you can really see that compared to non-native plants, the cool season things I was describing, their plants will have roots that are certainly less than 20 inches, maybe even just a few inches into the ground. So just as an example, this is just outside of Viroqua. These two pictures at the top are the same site. And on the upper left, you can see this is what it was before. It was corn and soybeans. And you can see all that bare ground. You can just imagine if you get 2 or 3 inches of rain, how much of that water is just going to sheet straight off and go straight down into a creek or something and carry a lot of soil and positive parts of the structure along with it. And then we put this native planting strip, which is this yellow curved arc right here. Those are some of the plants blooming. You can see there are a lot of black-eyed Susans in there just at this time of year. And so this prairie strip has now been in place for 5 years, and it's dramatically reduced the amount of water erosion that's been happening in this field. So this is just one. And I think we have 13 or 14 sites in the area now. I think there's here it is. This shows the different sites that we have. And we've completed about 1.5 miles of Streambank, as well as a bunch of farm fields as well with these prairie strips. And we're draining over 420 acres. So you can imagine we might put a 1 acre prairie strip in, but it might be draining 15 or 20 acres of farmland above it. And you can see the number of acres we have. So as of the end of last year, we were right at 32 acres that we've planted. And we already have a bunch on the books. We're going to plant 9 acres next week. So we're going to be just about 45 acres totally planted by the end of this year, which is terrific. And this is a stream bank. So this is the same spot. So this picture was in June of 2019, the upper picture. And then in October of 2020, so 1.5 years later, you can see that all that growth along the edges there. So this was a stream bank restoration project the county did. And we did the planting along the stream bank. And like I say, we wanted to try that strips concept from Iowa State, but put it not just in a farm field, but along a stream bank. And so we picked native plants that really like wet roots. And they have those same principles, deep roots, a robust upper structure that will help slow down water and stabilize that steam bank instead of ripping out during floods. And we've only done 2 of them so far, but they're both holding up really well so far. 3 of them so far, sorry. And that's it. So Nan, I believe, is going to talk about our membership and maybe how you can participate.
Hi, can you see my slides now? Great, thank you. I'm Nan Marshall, and I'm the Director of Operations, Communications, and Membership. And so, as Shelley had alluded to earlier, members are very important for our organization because we do a lot of work that is not supported by grants. And so we rely on our memberships to help provide the funding for those things, such as the Conservation on Tap education program that we used to do in conjunction with the Rooted Spoon. Summer workshops, although we won't be having any of those this year because of COVID. Small scale native planting programs, landowner visits and consultations. We also serve as a local and watershed resource. Some of our members had a quote about our collaboration. Valley Stewardship Network represents the best of the spirit of collaboration. They work with diverse groups in our community to further the goals of land conservation, erosion control, and promotion of sound land use practices. So we like to work with, we welcome all sorts of members. We communicate with our members via 12 e-newsletter mailings, 1 a month. We have a printed newsletter each year. We have our website, which we've been updating. It now includes some new features, such as our shared signs of the season section for any photographers out there who like to go out and take pictures and put them on our Facebook page, and then we add them onto our website. We have downloadable activity pages for children, and we have a shop where we sell t-shirts for the different watersheds that we work in the area. We also started our Connect to Protect Your Watershed campaign. And I mentioned the t-shirts, we have glasses and other outreach activities. We have a new social media program, and so we hope that you'd be interested in following us on Facebook and Instagram, so you can stay up to date on the latest happenings in the watersheds. We also feature exciting updates from the field. This picture here just shows examples of how well our cover crops that we've been experimenting with work in holding the soil over the winter. And it shows, again, the big root structures, kind of like Dave was talking about earlier. You get timely information about our programs and workshops. And we also have our website, valleystewardshipnetwork.org. So Conservation on Tap was our big education program that we usually ran through the late fall and winter and into the spring. Unfortunately, we didn't have a program this past winter, but our previous year was a big success. We had 5 presentations, and some of them had standing room only. Topics included trout, prairies, managed grazing, birds, and the changing landscape of the driftless area. And we're starting to put together a new season for the fall. It'll be virtual for the time being, but if you have any topics that you're interested in, just email us at info@valleystewardshipnetwork.org. And we always appreciated the Rooted Spoon for donating their space for us to use. We've also started attending some outdoor events like the farmers market or the night market or music festivals. That we only had 3 last year, of course, because of COVID. People really are enjoying our watershed t-shirts. It's always fun to figure out which watershed you are, and then you can wear it on your chest. And we have VSN beer glasses. We also have brochures about the work that we're doing with native plantings, bird-friendly beef and hay. We offer lists of activities taking place in the different watersheds, books, and reading lists. And if you're interested in those, just check out our website or contact our office. And we have an event coming up next week, or in 2 weeks, on Friday the 30th at 10:30 a.m. It's on Zoom, and we are going to be talking about Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Ptolemy. It's going to be hosted by Tom Lukens, and Ptolemy discusses his idea about how people can slowly use native plantings in their backyards or wherever to change the landscape in a way that's beneficial for people and wildlife. And Tom has been working on the project himself. He has an urban place and a rural place that he's been working on, so he'll share his insights that he's gained so far in the process. So how can you help protect your watershed? Definitely join VSN as a member. You can become a water action volunteer. As Dave mentioned, we have 2 trainings next week. If you'd like more information, just email us. Plant native plants for bird and pollinator habitat. Plant cover crops to protect and improve soil and increase water infiltration. And just get outside to enjoy and learn about the land, water, and wildlife in your watershed. If you'd like to become a member, you can sign up on our website by just clicking the Join Us button. Email us at info@valleystewardshipnetwork.org. And we're running a special for, well, we had our 20th anniversary last year, but we didn't celebrate it until this year. So if you join us at the $500 level, we'll send you a free Nature's Best Hope book by Doug Ptolemy. Cindy Hubbard, a local resident, she talks about that after being the 7th generation of her family to live in this area, she's inherited a love for the area and feels a responsibility to take care of it. And that's why she's become a member of VSN. So we hope that you'll all consider joining us. I want to thank you for coming along on our little journey here, and especially I'd like to thank Trina and the McIntosh Memorial Library for hosting us. And that's it. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. You can unmute and ask your questions.
I'm very impressed. This is the first thing I want to say. And I'm so pleased you mentioned the book discussion coming up with you, Tom, in just a couple of weeks. We purchased numerous copies of Nature's Best Hope, and I am proud to say they're never on our shelf. They're all checked out, which is fantastic. So it's been a super popular read with our patrons, and so I'm hopeful that it will be the result of a very healthy discussion coming up in just a couple of weeks. So if you'd like a copy of the book to participate, just call the library or just stop by. Does anyone have any questions for Nan, Dave, Shelley, even Tom that you would like to ask? Because now is the time to do so. I have several that I wrote down. One question I had is how many people work or volunteer with VSN? Because the number of projects you have going on, it seems like you would need a small army to complete all these amazing things.
I think Shelley mentioned the other day that we have 12, but I think that they're all part-time people, and I think we have 5 who are staff members or 7 staff members and 5 consultants. So it's a small army, and it's, like I said, we're all part-time.
Well, hats off, because you're doing so many amazing things. I felt like I knew a bit about Valley Stewardship Network, but I had no idea all the other wonderful things you're doing and working with the different watersheds and the local farmers and landowners. Those pictures are so impressive of, pre-COVID, the number of people gathering for discussions and action plans. It's impressive that you have found such a core group of people that are really invested in what you do.
Thanks.
And we had Rice Span on this month to talk about his role in helping train other people interested in water monitoring or water quality, which is something that is fascinating to me. And the number of places to go in our county is quite vast.
Yeah.
And when I think about, go ahead, Nan.
I was just going to say, we're still open to finding volunteers. So if anyone wants to join us, we definitely welcome anyone.
One of the questions I had, just especially listening to your presentation, Dave, is how did the floods impact the work of Valley Stewardship Network? Did it change your direction of where you were going, or did you feel like, oh, we're on track, even though so many of us were devastated by floods?
Good question. So as we were doing the water quality monitoring, we certainly noticed some changes in the watersheds. Areas that, in both directions, areas that might have had some problems before got a little bit better, and some areas that were great had some problems after that, especially macroinvertebrates, those little bugs in the water I was talking about.
Yes.
We did a macroinvertebrate survey that next spring, so just maybe 7-8 months after the flooding. And boy, the numbers were definitely down. So a lot of bugs got flushed out of the streams where we were doing the sampling. And those are slowly coming back as we're watching and we keep monitoring. And so that's a good sign. The streams have some resilience to them. It certainly has changed our work a little bit in the sense of now, maybe there's a little bit more focus on trying to improve some of the landowner practices so that we can reduce the amount of water coming off of the land. That's the biggest thing. I know the streams are down in the valleys and everything, but if we can change some of the landowner practices up on the ridges to keep the water there instead of trying to get it off as fast as possible, that really helps the stream miles away. So that's where some of the focus is of working with farmers to try to improve, putting cover crops on and putting perennial cover instead of corn and soybeans and things like that. So maybe a little bit more emphasis on that then.
Yeah. Well, I love the pictures of the native prairie plants. We have those here at the library. And it's just really exciting in the summer to go outside and see that they really do what they're supposed to do, attracting the pollinators. And I've taken many pictures because it just makes me proud that we made the decision when we built this library to put in native prairie plants. And I just feel like we're doing a good thing. And wow, we've got some real bee attracting plants here and butterflies. And it's just super cool to watch that happen throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can imagine pollinators, right? They need to eat every day, just like we do. And so if you have huge swaths of just corn or just soybeans that bloom just for that couple weeks a year, there's tons of food that couple weeks, but then after that, there's not a lot. So we've really noticed that having these native plantings around that have 40, 50 different species in them that are blooming for 6-7 months a year really provides a lot of that forage for pollinators to eat in this environment. So that's been very positive as well. I agree.
And they're beautiful too.
Yeah,
you know,
and they look good.
Yeah.
One of the nice things is that, you've demonstrated that you don't have to have, a giant piece of land or anything to do this, to make a difference. The library has a very small area, and you've succeeded in making a change, making a difference. In fact, VSN is really starting to promote that. Go Native for biodiversity and planting, like we alluded to with Doug Ptolemy's book, that anyone can do it. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it in just a very small piece, and every little bit helps because it'll attract these insects and pollinators and little critters that live in the plants, and that'll help birds, in town and in rural areas. And so anyone can participate.
And if you're wondering what we have planted at the library, we do have the name plates right in the ground, or the stakes, I guess, right in front of each plant. So you can walk by and say, oh gosh, now I know what that's called, if you'd like to go and purchase one yourself, versus trying to take a picture and guessing what it is. We've taken the heavy lifting out of that for you. So it feels good to be able to have those here. Any other questions from anyone for any of the folks from Valley Stewardship Network? Thank you for the information, Ann, on how to become a member and how those membership dollars are put back into such good use, not only in Verdon County, but of course extending beyond that into Crawford County as well. My hat's off to all of you for the work you're doing. I was naive as to all the wonderful things, and I appreciate that very much. And so do other people in this area. I think it's wonderful.
Well,
and Tom,
thanks for having us on.
Yeah, and Tom, we'll see you in a couple of weeks with a hearty discussion about Doug's book, and I hope we have a nice crowd for that.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week. And again, we have our conversations programs on the first and third Friday of each month at 10:30 through the McIntosh Memorial Library.